Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, breaking down Agatha All Along is Casey. How are you today?
Oh, how's it going, everybody? I'm doing good.
Good. Good to hear. Yeah, we are talking Agatha episode 4. If I can't reach you, let my song teach you. Directed by Rachel Goldberg, written by Giovanna Sarkis. It premiered October 2nd, 2024 on Disney Plus, and its synopsis is the coven faces their second trial on the witch's road. So let's get into our general thoughts as we are approaching the halfway mark of Agatha All Along. Casey, what is your thoughts on episode 4?
Good episode. I don't think they've had a bad one yet. Uh, Maybe not the strongest episode, but I think it also was maybe setting up more for the back half of the season. Um, Kind of like that jump to like, okay, things are going to escalate from this point forward. We're sowing the seeds of distrust. Now we've already had one person die in previous episodes. So now from this point forward, we really don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I saw a lot of praise for this episode, and I thought it was good, but I still think probably episode 3 is my favorite of them so far. Um, I think there's some great character work in this that we'll get and I get to, and I think that's one thing that this show is able to do so well because it has 9 episodes compared to some of these shows that had 6, and the fact that they're kind of continuing a story with characters we know like Agatha um, has helped us feel like we have some character development. This not some of these characters are brand new to us, of course, but like our main character is somebody that we were familiar with from WandaVision, and I think that's helped this show as well. So, um, yeah, so let's get into it. So they bury Sharon, right? And they have to summon a replacement Green Witch. So they do this summoning spell, and out from the grave pops Rio, who is back. Um, One thing I thought I saw somebody say that was funny is that Rio's last name is Vidal, and I believe it was one of the characters, Alice, asks for Advil. Uh, you know, and Vidal is actually Advil in like a like if you mix up the words and scramble them, you can get Advil from it. So I don't know if that's just part of the spell, like oh, it's brought her, Vidal, or if that's just like a fun thing for us. But regardless, thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, so Rio emerges from the grave, and Agatha is very annoyed. What was your take here, Casey? As we're gonna get more on their background hints as we go, but yeah, Agatha was not pleased.
Yeah, so I told you last week I saw some photo set spoilers from this episode, so I didn't know the plot, but I knew this episode would give us the reemergence of Rio and some other things that we'll talk about here in a couple minutes. I So I would have been surprised had I not seen those photos, but I'm also on Twitter and connected to a bunch of like sites that talk about Agatha and various things and spoilers for it, as far as like photos or like titles and like when the new preview for the week comes out, like it'll pop up on my timeline. So that's on me more than anything, right? But yeah, otherwise I would have been surprised. Like, wait a minute, so Rio's gonna be the like, and it is surprising, but it's not because we've in all the trailers and everything, we've seen her interact more with the rest of the group, or we've seen her more than the episode and a half, 2 episodes we got so far. So we knew she still had to pop up. Um, but it was good to see. It was sad to see them just burying Sharon. That kind of stung, but never say never in Marvel if you're going to see that character ever again. Um, it it it, it definitely it definitely added just a ball of chaos to this comic. Like, is the only way I
Hmm.
really try and put it into words. Um, we've talked about how much we love Aubrey Plaza in general already, and I think she's doing such a great job in this character. But so I don't know if it's the character. I don't know if it's Aubrey Plaza. I don't know if it's a combination of. But she's just this tiny ball of chaos. And then I saw an interview she did a couple of days ago. The interview's from a while back where I guess she did a movie. She was a producer on, and she was in a movie with Elizabeth Olsen a while back. Um, and they talked about the love that they had for each other and the different things that happened on set, and like the first thing they shot. But Elizabeth Olsen was like, "No, I don't think that was. Wait a minute, it was." But you could tell like the people loved working with her and filming with her and everything. And she just seems like this tiny little ball of chaos. So
Yeah, and I guess like I don't know if it would be like a surprise because like if we take Lilia's right divination honestly, right? And she wrote down the name of all of the coven, even her own name without realizing she did. Then the black heart being for Rio, if that's what we're assuming, then
makes
we
sense.
were. It makes sense that she would be the one that comes out of this, right? Like it's finally fulfilling the rest of that coven. Um, there's some hints to who she really is in this episode that again I got spoiled on, so I don't really want to like speculate on. But if you come up with any speculation on it, we can address it. But
Well, I searched out the spoilers
okay,
for
okay.
that, so I know what it's spoiling as to who she is, but I don't know. As we've talked about many times on this podcast before, I don't know the comics. So if there are hints to this character, I don't know what those hints. Me personally, I don't know what those hints are because I'm not familiar with the character. I'm not familiar with
I'll
the comics, stuff like that. So even knowing where if these spoilers are accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it because I saw it in quite a few different places, then like
yeah.
it still doesn't mean anything to me because or it still doesn't give me anything because those spoilers could have been clear as day for other people, but I was oblivious to it.
I think there's some lines we'll definitely I'll definitely highlight that she says that I'll say to the listener kind of hints. Um I'm not going to outrightly say who she is,
Yeah, I
but
won't do that either. I'll let people go on this journey.
I'll drop some little nuggets for people if they're curious. And if you are really curious and you do want to know, you can search that out like Casey did, and uh, you without me spoiling it for everybody that's listening. So, uh, okay, so while it's top of mind, there is a line. Okay, I'll say one. The way that she rises up, and where from, I think is a pretty big tell. And then later on, when she's having that conversation with Agatha about Teen, and says he's not yours, right?
Yeah,
I think that is also like there is a character that would know that. So that is what I'll say as well. So I think it all fits. Like I'm starting to come along to. We saw the spoiler, and I was like, oh, I haven't really. There's maybe some hints in dialogue in episode one without us really talking about maybe even the fact that it's a black heart as her thing. We thought maybe that was Blackheart Marvel character. Um, And then there is just some of these lines of things that it seems like she would know in if she was that character. Um,
Speaking of teen,
yeah. Hmm.
something we didn't talk about last week, and I didn't remember until after we had stopped recording and we went on about our day. Um, who was the character that the trial was focused on this week? I can't remember the names. I'm sorry.
Alice. Yeah.
Okay, so Alice had team last week in episode 3. Team was talking with Alice and asking about her tattoo. She said it was like a protection thing, and
Hmm.
like her mom had passed away when she was 13. And Teen brought up, well, some bad things happened to me when I was 13 as well.
Yes. And 13
And
would be 3 years ago.
3, yeah,
Yeah.
we had. I had brought it up briefly about, hey, we'll talk about that later, and then we never did. And then like I didn't remember till like we had finished recording and we were off, and I walked away, and I was like, and then when I listened back to it earlier this week when it came out while I was delivering my mail, I was like, oh yeah, I never addressed that. So yeah,
I
that
remember you saying that now too, and I was like, because I was listening to it while editing, and I was like, I don't know if we ever talked about that.
but yeah, that definitely that the fact that he talks about, oh yeah, well, some bad things happened to me when I was 13 too, definitely, and him being 16 now, definitely. I know I talked about originally in the first episode how I wasn't keen on him being a 16-year-old, but now like I'm fine with it more and more, and it fits and it makes more and more sense.
Yeah. Again, this is a character that was spoiled. I think most people's theories are the correct theory, especially now that we know from this that it's not Nicholas Scratch. This is not. I almost said Nicholas Sparks. That's the author that wrote quite a few books. Nicholas Scratch. Um, when Rio tells Agatha he's not yours, there's only one character this can really be.
And then did you great job by Catherine Hahn. Did you see the heartbreak on her face after Rio
Yeah.
told her that?
Catherine Hahn is one of the reasons why this character works and why she got her own spinoff is because people really dug what she brought to, let's face it, in WandaVision, Agatha is a very background character. Like she has lines, she does stuff, but she's a villain, right? But she's not. We find out the main villain really of WandaVision is Wanda for putting a lot of these people
Yeah,
through it. So uh the reason why Agatha took off and they were like, we need to do a spinoff is because I just remember so many people praising Catherine Hahn, and now she gets to do a whole nother, like, she's acting in a totally different way as Agatha in this because now we're actually seeing, since she's center stage, we're seeing her character shine and her background. She wouldn't have a scene like this that you're referring to with Rio in WandaVision. She was more of the comedic.
she was Kramer. She was the kooky neighbor
Yeah,
who would like pop over all the time and do weird and kooky
with
stuff.
hints of like sinister stuff, but like that was it.
And yeah, because I remember when we talked about this, like especially we really had no clue what was going on or what was happening in WandaVision. Like there were little hints spread throughout, and and then until what was it, episode 2 or 3, where we finally got the break of like, hey, there's FBI surrounding Westview, and there's all this other stuff. And was Jimmy Woo? Then we get the reemergence
Yeah,
of
Jimmy Woo and Darcy were
yeah,
coming in to save the day.
which I need more. I do need more Darcy and Jimmy Woo in my life. Like Marvel, what are you doing? Like, I'm not saying they need to pop in this show, but those two are great characters as it was. Didn't know that was a combination that I needed, especially
Yeah,
those
yeah.
two put together. But
Real quick
we
though, that's what's so great about the MCU. Literally, Jimmy Woo is a character from the Ant-Man movies. Darcy's from the Thor movies. They get put together because they're in the same universe, and they were fun, like a fun matchup that we had there. So like that's
yeah,
one thing that's really cool about the MCU.
like I said, especially with Darcy's her specialty or whatever it is that she does. Like I know she was going to school with Jane for a while, and so. But I was like, yeah, that could be like a new Mulder and Scully. Like that could be the new X Files thing. Like I would watch that show. Like that would have been great. But she was just a kooky, like Agatha or Agnes, as she was called back then, was just like this kooky neighbor, right? You had more knowledge on who she was and speculated that she was, this witch Agatha Harkness or whatever. Once again, my comic knowledge is non-existent, so I had no clue. But I was there for the ride, and it was great. But yeah, she like the best way I can put it, she was just Kramer. She would always pop up at these weird, random moments, and say or do weird things that we little did we know there was a reason behind that until later in the series. But yeah, now we get to see the true Agatha, um, and what's going on. We got a glimpse of it in the last couple episodes where she had her confrontation with Wanda. Um, and who would have thought the girl from Step Brothers would be doing all this, man? That's
Um. Okay, so I guess let's get into. Okay, so there's something interesting between Teen and Agatha here too. When she's checking on him after his injury, where he asks about like, "Did you put the sigil on me?" Right, and she says,
no,
"Uh, no, but I wouldn't know." Right, like
yeah, and then
sometimes those things end up protecting the caster as well. And now I'm seeing theories that maybe Teen put it on himself and now doesn't remember. There's also theories that like when he talks, it kind of looks like a W and an M, and that it's Wanda Maximoff that maybe put it on him, right? Like there's a couple
yeah,
theories going around on who put it, but I think we will get that answer for sure this season if they keep hinting at who did this, who did that. So I am confident we'll get that answer
I,
this season.
I think we will get the answer, and I'm sticking by. I think we will see Elizabeth Olsen return by the end of the series. Um,
Yeah.
did you catch the shout out to Wizard of Oz in this episode?
Which one?
There was more than one. I caught one.
No, I don't know. I'm just like
So
what was said, and then
uh,
I'll see if I caught it or
it
not.
was it wasn't that they said anything. So when they initially after they I don't even know how to say it after they got Rio to where they were, and then
Hmm.
they talked about having to continue walking down the road. And I forget what Rio says, but she's like, "Okay, let's go." And then she kind of, if you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, the actual movie, which I loved from when I was a kid, when it used to come on once a year,
Right.
um, and I actually own a nice Blu-ray box set of it. But like when they would start and sing the song "We're Off to See the Wizard," and they would go on in arms, and they would kind of do this little jump and kick and
Yes. Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of kind of like
I can
start
picture
dancing
it.
down the
Yeah.
road. Rio kind of does that as she's starting to walk down the road.
I think I noticed her do something like that, but I didn't make the connection. But now I can see it as you're because like you said, they usually lock arms and they'll do like a real exaggerated like "Let's go," and then they
Yeah,
start
they
they
kind of
start
kick up
going.
and
Yeah.
there's a little
Yeah.
choreographed thing, and it was like Rio kind of did that little skip there herself. And obviously, in case you have not seen The Wizard of Oz, I would definitely encourage you to watch it. It's a great classic movie. There's some heartbreak and trauma behind what the making of the movie, but that's beside the point. But there is a witch that is front and center, and actually there's several witches, but one in particular that are front and center and a key part to that story, which is
And
where we
she's a
get.
green witch.
Yes, she's the Wicked Witch of the West. She is painted green. Um, quick side note. On top of this side note, uh, the actress who played the Green Witch actually appeared as the Green Witch on Sesame Street for an episode. But unfortunately, it scared the bejesus out of children nationwide, so she was never able to do that character on Sesame Street again. Which is a shame because she was great in that role.
Hmm.
But also, we have Wicked coming out here in the next year. So
Yeah.
I think it's more than one. I think they split it up into two
Yeah,
parts.
it's part 1 and part 2. They just haven't been marketing that it's part 1.
I
So I don't
haven't
know.
I haven't seen Wicked at all. I don't know much about it other than it was a huge Hollywood, or I'm sorry, Broadway
Yeah,
play.
I haven't seen Wicked either, but my wife is a huge Wicked fan, so we're going to see the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
my best
we're
friend in
off to see the
Colorado.
movie. Yeah. And it's going to be, from what I read, 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is the length of the musical. So part 1 is going to be as long as the usual musical. So that'll be interesting.
Now, is that based on a book or was that just
Yes.
strictly a? Okay, so there actually is more that they can.
Yeah, so they're probably taking stuff from the book. Yeah.
Because I haven't read all. I've read some of the Oz books when I was a kid. There's actually like 7 or 10 or something like that. Like there's
Yeah.
kind of like this whole.
Return to Oz, right, is one of
I
them.
guess it's kind of like the MCU. Like there's this whole Oz universe of like these various things. But
Well, yeah,
anyway,
because like in the books, they don't have the twist from the movie. Uh, Oz is real, right? So
yeah,
uh, they can go like do more books, and I think that like I remember I started reading some of them or something when I was in like elementary school, and I was thinking like, how do you do a sequel after that ending? And it's like, oh, well, that action ending was actually just for the movie, so
yeah.
you can
But yeah,
keep doing
but
more books.
she is the Green Witch, and according to the trailers, one of them, and they've, especially with the credits and things they've made, they have shown bits and pieces of stuff. Like they have a little thing in in the credits that's kind of based on Bewitched, like the opening credits and everything of Bewitched, where I think Samantha is the main character's name in that, is kind of riding around in a room that does the credits, and they're in this one. They show Feruza Balk's character from The Craft. Have you seen that?
Did I see what?
The Craft?
No, no.
Oh, interesting. We'll have to keep that in mind. But that was a late '90s, early 2000s witch movie where Nev Campbell, Feruza Balk, a couple other people kind of make their own coven, become witches, and then chaos ensues after that. And
So, sorry, real quick. I just want to say, green witches embrace the power of nature. Um, use plants, flowers, oils, herbs for healing, stuff like that. So that's, you know, um, obviously I was, joking about the green witch, the Wicked Witch being green. She's literally green, but like in Marvel, this green witch is like, this is a typical witch thing where they deal with nature and stuff.
but at the same time, in one of the trailers, and in some of the trailers, I don't know if it's a shout out to the Wizard of Oz. I'm assuming it is because that's probably the most famous Green Witch anyone's ever seen. One of them, it might be, it's either Rio or Agatha. It does end up green, like physically green. So that could be like
Oh,
a
you're
dream.
right. You're right.
That could be like a dream sequence or a flashback of some sort.
And you were there. And you were there.
Yeah, but one of the I want to it's I want to say it's one of the two of them does end up as like this green witch character from, like, obviously a shout out to the Wizard of Oz, but who knows where that could
Yeah. Do you think we go? Do you think we're going back in time? Like, the let's say the Desperate Housewives set from last week is what I call it. That's like 2000s, modern 2010s, whatever, right? Like, and then this one goes to 70s, but Alice has that connection to the 70s because of her mom being a singer in that era. Like, do you think we're able to like free roam bounce? Like next week could be 80s, or are they going to keep going backwards? Like maybe that one of them turning green almost is like a 1930s Wizard of Oz type of thing, right? Or uh I'm just speculating here. Or like,
go.
do you think this will be linear, or are we going to be hopping?
I think after seeing this episode, I think each trial is going to be a trial, kind of a trial for someone in that coven. Like
Yes.
they will all have to work together in order to survive and make it through these trials. But I think each trial will focus on one of these witches. And I think we will go back because this segues very nicely into who is the older witch.
What do you mean? The older. Oh, her name Lilia, right? And her flat like
Lil-
her vision was like Renaissance esque.
so yeah, we had her
Yeah.
vision last week. This week, uh, Lilia has been through some trauma. As they went into the recording studio or whatever that was, and as they're walking around and they're trying to figure out where to go next or how this trial starts, and she ends up looking at these drawings and paintings on the wall of like a witch being burned at the stake or being boiled in a cauldron and all these torturous things that they had previously done to witches throughout time in history and in things we've read about in books. You can tell that she has faced some trauma because I imagine at her age she has probably survived most of these things. Like we obviously know Agatha goes back to Salem. So we know she goes back to at least like the 15, 16, 1700s in that range for Agatha. But Lilia, I would imagine, might go back further in time. And
Yeah, I
from the
think so.
trauma that she was able to express from her reactions and her emotions, it looks like she may come face to face with some of these things. Like some of those people drawn or painted might have been people she's known or her friends or family. And she managed to escape. Like she might have been lucky and managed to escape. Or she might have been young enough where like maybe her family, told her don't say anything, just, relax, stay calm. And maybe her mom, grandma, aunt, whatever, was captured, had to go through these things. But Lilia herself might have been in the crowd and had to watch but not say anything because she didn't want to out herself as a witch. But she still had to witness all of these things that have happened.
Right. Let's keep with her real quick because I don't know if you've noticed, Casey, but there's times where she is completely speaking about things that are not happening at that time. Now we know that she is a divination witch as well. Um, but there are things that she is referencing in the first three episodes that make more sense to this. Like uh, when Agatha and her are going through the stuff to try to get the oils for the potion at the end of last week, right? And they're split off. And she mentioned something about having to save Agatha. And Agatha kind of looks at her like, what are you talking about? And then there's a few times in this episode where she's saying something, and then people reply or laugh at it. And then she kind of comes back to reality and is like, what are you guys talking about? And then everybody's like, oh, that's weird. I think this has something to do with her divination where she's reacting to stuff that has yet to happen because she's having a vision of something. Um, like I think somebody pointed out in that I saw online is I think when she is first meeting Agatha and Teen and they're trying to get her on board, she has this moment where she just starts screaming in her kitchen, and people think that is like the part where she gets caught on fire in this episode and she kind of lets out the same scream. So I think we can kind of maybe, and I kind of want to go back and do this at some point, is maybe go back through the first episodes before next week if I can and kind of note those moments and see what she says and try to make connections onto what she would be talking about. Have you noticed any of that?
I have not. I think you could do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I think you might end up like the meme from That's Sunny in Philadelphia. You might be looking for Carol. Carol, you're gonna end up with a whiteboard with a bunch of red string all over the place, and you're not gonna be able to figure
Mm-hmm.
it out because Marvel tends to do stuff like that. But you might be able to figure it out. I probably would. I'd end up going
I've seen some that were like, okay, so here's some right here. I just found this. Some person posted it on Reddit. Um, she has something where she says, "Try to save Agatha." That's when she's talking to Agatha as they're trying to get the things, and she looks confused. And then Agatha looks confused. She's like, "What are you talking about?"
I mean, I have
Uh,
noticed that like she is saying stuff, and then eventually like other people like there seems to be a disconnect at some point between what
yes,
she's
yeah.
seeing and saying and what other people are saying to her or listening to and seeing. So I have seen that, but I haven't been able to like piece it together as far as like
So
what any
there's
of it might
one
mean or anything.
when she's catching fire. She says, "Get it off me." And when they were in the basement in the first episode or second episode, before they do the Witch's Road, she screams, "Get off me!" And everybody looks at her weird.
Well, also something I forgot to bring up. I said there was a good shout out last week. There was a Hansel and Gretel shout out.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Where she talked about, she didn't want to crawl into the oven because she's like, I had a friend who did that, and then and basically she was talking about she knew the witch from Hansel and Gretel fairy tale. So that's another thing that makes me think she really has some age and wisdom on her. Where like if she's going back to connecting herself to the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale, right? Like that, the brothers
yeah,
Grimm go way back, so she's definitely got some time on her, and I am really really interested to see what her trial is going to be or what her story is going to entail. Like I want to know more about her. That
yeah,
actress is doing a fantastic job.
yeah. So just something to keep track of here as you're watching next week, listeners. If she says something, it could be foreshadowing another episode that is coming up or a moment in that episode later, as she is kind of experiencing visions ahead of time due to her divination nature, I believe. Um, okay, so they get into the house and it's very 70s aesthetic. Everybody's dressed up as the 70s, right?
This was something else I saw in
Me
like
too,
those
yeah.
preview photos, so I didn't really want to. I didn't want to spoil for anyone last week who might not have seen them because it wouldn't have been fair. And I also saw that they would be singing this episode. So once again, like I saw that kind of had the 70s look. Saw like some still photos of them behind the microphones and singing. So I was like, oh, okay, I know what something that's going to happen this episode, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone else who was out there who might not have caught those. So that's why kind of like last week I was like, I've seen. I just didn't want to
Yeah, I was kind
kind
of
of give it away.
dancing. Yeah, I was kind of dancing around it as well last week. Okay, so they're in the 70s. This is tied to Alice and her mom, who was a um, what'd you say, like Fleetwood Mac esque band, or maybe with less drama, or more drama, I guess, than Fleetwood Mac. But she apparently sings her version of the road. They originally thought was to open the road, right, to try to get
Yeah,
people to open the
try and
road.
find some place that if
There's
the
enough witches in
crowd
the crowd who are singing, right?
and
Like,
that would be her coven. That would be her coven. As Agatha puts it. They were trying to make it that's her coven, and then maybe they could open the road, at one of these concerts, and then she could travel down the road. Was what
and
they
maybe
initially thought.
and maybe that was her first intention, but the song is now a protection spell they learn, right? And
Yes.
because somebody out there, I kind of like the way they did this, because it's a song and it was a hit song. There is somebody out there listening to it at any moment in time that
Yeah.
it is protecting her all the time, and I
It,
really
and
liked how they did that.
it's when the song is not playing that she becomes vulnerable to this generational curse
Yes,
and this demon or whatever that's uh that's been haunting this family.
Casey, do you think this is true? Just like if you're like, is there somebody out there right now listening to "Fortunate Son" by Creedence Clearwater Revival right now?
You know what? I think there are some songs that at any given moment in time somebody is listening to or playing.
Beatles, I would assume,
The,
somebody out there is listening to.
so a Michael Jackson song,
Yeah,
Beatles, Beyonce song. Um, I think some of your bigger Elvis Presley, the Rolling Stones,
right.
stuff like that. Yeah, maybe some stuff from the '70s, a Creedence Clearwater Revival, or but maybe possibly Fleetwood Mac.
Hmm.
But I think there might be certain songs that at any given point in time, somewhere, I'd say at least somewhere in our country, if not the world, somebody's listening to or playing at any given point in time. Now, especially, uh, it seems to happen earlier and earlier every year. I'd say, especially in about a month or so, one of those songs will
Mariah
be
Carey.
Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You," which I will say, if you're not on if you're on social media and you're not following her, you really should, because she's really leaned into that aspect. It started 5-10 years ago where people, as soon as like Thanksgiving would hit, people were like, "Oh, well, here she comes." And now, like every year, she puts out new videos, kind of as it gets closer and closer, and kind of like there was one year where like she thawed out, like as soon as Thanksgiving hit, like she thawed. Last year, the year before, speaking of which, ties in very well. She played a version of the Green Witch, of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, um, with that whatever it was when she was on a broomstick. As it was getting closer and closer for. And I read somewhere she makes millions of dollars a year from that song,
Yeah, all the
from
royalties.
royalties from
Yeah.
that, just from that one song.
Same thing with McCartney. Makes a lot of money off of his Christmas song
So this
because
is
it's
Christmas or
played all the
whatever.
time.
Yeah.
No, the what simply having wonderful Christmas time.
Oh, yeah.
He gets a lot of money from that each year because so many stations are playing it at like any given moment. It's
Yeah.
royalties paid to him. So
But yeah, it tied in perfectly because I remember last year, the year before, she played the Wicked Witch of the West, and kind of like on an exercise bike or something, and as we were getting closer to her breaking it out. So yeah, I think yeah that there's a good chance there are some songs that could actually be protection spells too. You never
I
know.
like the idea of it. I like the idea of it because it just shows that music like never
It's universal
dies.
language.
Right? Yeah, like never dies. There is a song out there people are listening to at this very moment that's probably been around for a while that um even if you want to get in more into like the Bach and Mozart of it all, right, where like people are listening to classical music that have been around for at this point, hundreds of years almost. Um yeah.
You know what is a great thing to do? So I go down like weird YouTube rabbit holes at times, right? And I
Mhm.
have very eclectic music tastes. So at one point, I ended up on some weird channel, and it was like, "Hey, these are classical music songs that you've heard millions of times, and you probably don't know what the names of them are, right?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll bite, sure." And then I heard a bunch of them, and I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know the name of that song." And then
Yeah. You're
I
like that's
actually,
the hold song when I call my insurance company.
yeah, or I actually have some of them because I still download music. I don't necessarily stream everything. I
Same
still
thing
like
for me,
buy
yeah.
music from iTunes and everything.
Yep.
But I actually have a couple that because they're just like some music stands the test of time and is just great. So
Okay, so you say you have eclectic music taste. What's your favorite type of music?
I'd have to go from like '80s, '90s, early 2000s R&B and pop and rap. Like I'll be honest, I haven't listened to much new music from like 2010, 12 on. Like
Mm.
I am at that age as I turned 46 here in less than a week. I am at that age where I listen to music nowadays and I'm like, this stuff is garbage. And it's the same thing people were telling me when I was a kid. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
how can people listen to this crap? This stuff is garbage. And then and now I have glasses and I have gray hair, and I'm like, damn it, that is it.
That's funny. No, I've been on a '90s kick recently, so I've been listening to all what I grew up on. You know, Hootie and the Blowfish and Ace of Base and all that stuff.
I have like 3 songs, in so I have a bunch of different playlists, and one of them is like my purchase music, like, and then my top rated purchase music,
Right, right.
and then so like weird things will get me, like will hit me, and it's like, oh, I remember them. I want to get that song. And I was watching American Dad. I was going through one of my binges of American Dad, and Roger the Alien was singing "I Saw the Sign" as he was chasing down the family, trying to kill them. And I'm like, yeah, those guys weren't too bad back in the day. And then I bought a couple songs, and then I found out like one of them was like part of like he has since denied it or like apologized for it. But at one point, one of the guys from Ace of Base was like part of
In
some
a
far
Nazi
right
band. Yeah.
neo-Nazi group or something. It was like, whoa, maybe I should research
Yeah.
this before I start buying stuff.
No, Ace of Base is
It's
great.
still,
But what I'll say too is
it still slaps.
there's some stretches there too. Like I know there was somebody that said that there was an article that I read. I think it was on Cracked or something where they were trying to say that all of these Ace of Base songs are Nazi songs. Like All That She Wants is a Nazi song because all that she wants is another baby, and it's like, having babies is what. But I was like, that's not what they're saying. All she wants is another baby, like another guy that she moves on to. Like I don't know, like it's not
Look,
even what they were saying, but
look.
whatever.
You could probably find meaning of anything anywhere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But in my pea brain, I think I read that very same cracked article, and in my pea brain, some of those things make a little too much sense. And honestly, sometimes the easiest way to hide something is to put it out there in plain sight, and people will tend to skip over it because it's too obvious of a choice.
Like hiding a
Um,
protection spell in a song.
in a popular song, yeah.
What do you think of
Um,
the '70s version of this song?
as the
The
kids
slap?
say, it slaps. I look, okay. Let's take a sidebar here for a second. What does the "it slaps" even mean? And why is it like what's slap like who's slapping who? What's slapping what? What is
I
going
always
on here?
picture just like slapping my knee, like that was great. Like I don't know, like
I,
that's what I
I
picture.
tend to like all I can think of is like reaching your hand back and like slapping the hell out of somebody. Like I mean, I don't know, but I think it slaps. I think I might find myself. I haven't
Buying
looked
this
on
version.
iTunes. Yeah, well, that I haven't found myself looking on. Haven't bought the other version either. Because in my car I have like an hour or so commute every day, and one of the things in my car that I get is free. I can stream YouTube music for free.
Oh, really?
So I've listened to a bunch of stuff, and then I'll be honest, maybe not the best streaming service, but I've been on YouTube long enough where I've watched a bunch of music videos and Vivo stuff of various artists, and I've thumbs up enough to rate, you know, given my approval to them. So it's kind of I have like this whole the algorithm for me kind of knows what I like and what I may not like and everything. So like yeah, for an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes going back and forth to work every day, like I'll throw on some YouTube music, and I've recently added uh the Witch's Road ballad on there, so I may have to end up buying those as well.
Yeah, I was just looking. They released on the 3rd of October on iTunes the episode 4 versions of the song. So that's this one. Has some new lyrics, of course. Talking about like dancing inside the circle, I guess that they
They had to carve. Yeah, I was gonna
yeah,
say,
that they carve in.
what did you think of? Okay, so they're in the house. They can't figure out what's going on, right? Like they're trying to figure out because they're like, okay, they're walking up the road and they see this house. Now, okay, this is how the last trial started. Like,
turn around, do not go back in, right? And then it takes them right back to it. Yeah.
Well, that's what Alice. I think Alice might have. Maybe that was like Alice's house, or like Alice had been to that recording studio as a kid. Because she
Could be.
seemed to like she had the visceral reaction of
Yeah.
everyone else was like, "Hey,
She
what?"
knew it
Like,
was her trial, it seems like, right?
yeah, she knew it was specifically meant for her, right? So that's why she was like, "Yeah, you guys, I'm not involved in this." And the world was like, "Nah, we're doing this." Because just kind of like in a horror movie, they turn around and it's like, nope, right here, you're going in. Also, the phases of the moon are have some sort of on these doors have some sort of meaning as well. Because what was the
Yeah, I
last? The
didn't.
last one was like for a full moon or something, I think.
Yeah, and I didn't quite get that. Like, I don't know, like what we're supposed to take from it, um, or if it's just something that the characters will notice. Because I don't really know the phases that well, so But they
There's
mention it and they go in. But
there's a full moon, a new moon, and I think waxing and waning
yeah,
are the two other portions of the moon, if I remember correctly,
and
and I
there's
probably
different
don't.
ones in there. There's waxing gibbous, right? And then there's
Crescent,
waxing. Yeah, there's all type of stuff.
but I know. So maybe because I think last episode was probably the full moon, and then you get to one whatever this one was. So I have at least one or two more, and then I think the final trial maybe that'll end up being the new moon, and that will kind of be like where you can maybe restart everything over again and go into better times. I don't know.
And what did they say this one was?
Waxing or waning gibbons or crescents. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's any sort of symbolism.
I'm
So it says the phases of the moon symbolize immortality, eternity, enlightenment, or the dark side of nature herself. Uh, it doesn't say which one means what though on this website.
I would think maybe the full moon, or so maybe last week was a new moon. I think maybe the full moon is the dark side of nature, possibly, because even though obviously werewolves may not exist, or we don't know, we can't prove that they exist. I happen to think that there's a possibility, but that's just my weird pea brain. Um, if you've talked to nurses, if you've talked to police officers, there's way too many weird things that happen during a full moon, like emergency
Mm-hmm.
rooms. Police officers have to deal with all kind of batshit crazy stuff.
Same thing with teachers. They say like the kids are nuts.
Yeah, and I think people have tried to do experiments on not experiments, but like to do scientific research on like does the full moon actually affect like the human psyche and stuff. And I don't know what the results of that are, if it's even been conclusively proven. But if you talk to anybody who deals in some of those professions, they will tell you, no, like, yeah, full moon is some real stuff. And there's definitely some weird things that
Something else I just read is that if you talk about stages of human development, the new moon is infancy, the crescent is youth, the full moon is maturity, and the waning moon represents decline of life. So I mean that can mean something if we get to waning moon. If that's what
happen.
this
Yeah.
was, that would make sense too, right? Like
Well,
there's
no,
stuff here,
maybe because
or
this
maybe it'll
was,
be one of the last doors, right? Will be
yeah, because this
waning.
one was put on Alice as she was a kid, right? This protection spell was
Yeah,
put on
yeah.
Alice as she was a child, and she never really knew what it was. And then, so they're in the house, and Rio still has her knives. I wonder if that was actually really something that they wrote up, or Aubrey Plaza, because I think she really seems to be into like knife play and stuff like that, because she's Aubrey Plaza. Maybe that was added specifically for her. But yeah, they grab one of those blades, um, and have to make like a protection circle around a couple of people, because whatever this is, this that's been chasing Alice is now starting to go after other people. Um, it attacks Teen. attacks Teen in a much different way than everybody else as well.
You mean when he gets hurt by the glass, or
Well, the fact that it
the
like
other way?
picks him up and throws him across the room.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then eventually we find out he's got a shard of glass coming out of his stomach, which, look, I understand they're on a mission and they have a certain purpose they have to do. But if I got like an 8-inch piece of glass coming out of my stomach and I'm bleeding profusely, everybody in the world's gonna know it until like I'm healed. Like
You're not
I'm
gonna
not.
keep playing the song. You're gonna collapse.
No, like this is definitely gonna be. Yeah, it's gonna be. So, also, what did you think of the conversation of Agatha setting up Rio with the conversation in the recording booth?
Oh, I really like that. I like when Agatha, like, Catherine Hahn does this thing when Agatha is being almost like when she was with Teen and they meet Lilia, and she does like the over the top acting. She does that with this too, where she's like, Rio's trying to elude like betraying the coven, and since she's has the intercom on, she's like, "What? No, I would never."
I
Right?
would
Like
never
she's
do such a thing.
she's very over the top with it, and I really enjoy that. Um,
Now,
but
now
I love that. I love that she did this too.
I will admit, at first, for a split second, I thought maybe she hit the mic by accident, and then after a second, I was like, "Oh no, she did that shit on purpose. Like she knew what she was doing."
Yeah, yeah, because she like asks like, "So what's your plan?" or whatever, right? Like,
And I love
um,
towards the end of the episode, Lilia grabs Rio and is like, "We haven't forgotten what you said."
right, right. And look, they make it out of this without losing a member in this trial, right?
Barely.
Uh, barely. But I just want to point that out because we were kind of wondering like what the structure would be like at the end of each trial. Is somebody dead? And like you said in the trailer, there's a line of the body stacking up. So far, it felt like that would be too quick because we're not even halfway yet. We'll be halfway in the middle of next episode. So I do think that this will kind of start that this episode wouldn't have anybody we lose. Maybe next week we do, and then things
Yeah.
start picking up again. But Alice gets through this, and they sing the song. They kill the demon, and the
I
only thing,
loved
Dean gets hit in the abdomen, and it gets healed. But yeah, that's where we're at.
I loved more of the horror elements starting to come out. So, they're playing the song and finally we get to see whatever it is that's cursing her. And it's this just like, yeah, the only thing that we can really describe it as is this demon. And for a Disney show, like that's not something I would have expected to see, for like a Disney show. Um and then it attaches itself to Alice again, but they managed to play the hell out of that song, and finally, she's broken away from this curse. So the curse on her and her family is lifted. So
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of sad in the sense of I don't know if Alice makes it out of this. So now she finally gets that curse lifted, and it's like, will it matter in the sense of like, is she going to be able to get out of this alive? Right? Like to be able to have that new chance at life when she gets out, because they've had this curse where she's not able to hold a job, right? And now she finally got through it. But do you see her getting out of this? Or are we expecting Agatha? They have this conversation. I forgot where they mention what the lyrics of the song mean, right? And Agatha says "Coven of Two," right? Coven two, and they meant like no, it's Coven two isn't also or whatever, right? And she says no, it's Coven two, and they ask her how many people left the road with her, and she was like, it was me and one other person. It was like two of us.
yeah.
So if we take that at face value, only two
I think the
people are
only
getting out of this.
I think the only two are Teen and Agatha.
I would think so as well. Yeah.
I think there's a good chance Rio doesn't even make it. And
And
that,
there,
that's
another question I have is, does without spoiling it, but like, does Rio count as that because who she is may not be able to die, is what I'll say. So she
And not
might
only that, but
make it
the fact
fine.
that she just was added to this coven supposedly. So I don't know.
Yes, true.
So is she technically even part of the coven? Because they had to request they had to like send a special request in to get her, get expedited shipping. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so we are kind of in agreement, right? We think Agatha and Teen will be the ones alive. And if we take what Lilia says to Agatha last week, right, when she has that out of order speaking, right, when she says, try to save Agatha, she's telling somebody to try to save Agatha, probably over herself. So I would assume at some point these people realize that maybe Agatha's needed, or
Not
they
everybody's gonna
become
make it. Yeah.
they become friendly enough where Lilia tells maybe Teen or somebody else, like, hey, try to save Agatha. Like, leave me, try to save her. And it's kind of like a choice, maybe. That's some speculation I have.
So let's talk about the interactions between Agatha and Rio. We had speculated in the first episode that there was possibly some romantic things that happened between them previously. Um, I don't think that there's any way we can deny that after this episode.
No, no, I think that's what happened. I do wonder though, will they show it, right? Like she's about to kiss, they're about to kiss, and then they get interrupted by Rio saying that's not your, like that's not him. And like I said, one thing I was kind of concerned about going into this is how much they've been pumping up like this will be like super gay, but I'm like, Disney usually doesn't allow that. Like, will you
Yeah.
actually show it? And so far it still is only alluding to that. So we'll see if they actually. I think they might be able to get a smooch in later in the season, but
Look, I'll be honest with you. Even if they don't show it for whatever reason, I think just the interactions that we have seen so far between the two of them,
it's enough for us to put it together. Yeah.
and I think it's just enough. Period. Like, yeah, we can put it together, and I think those two have those two have a chemistry together. Like, I don't know if it's just because Aubrey Plaza is so psychotic and Catherine Hahn seems a little more down to earth, and this might be one of those opposites attract type things. Um, but yeah, like there are definitely sparks there between the two of them, and like as I'm watching this, I'm like, oh yeah, those two have been together. Like yeah, those two, like everything that I thought I was picking up on, I'm like, yeah, no, that's happening. But we also get the tender moments where once Teen kind of lets everybody know, hey guys, there's something wrong with me. I got an 8-inch piece of glass sticking out my stomach now. It collapses, right? Agatha, remember, she didn't even really want Teen involved with her in the first place. She didn't want him coming down the road. Like, she was just going to leave him tied up in the house and she was going to scurry away on her own. Um, but now there's a genuine care about him from her. Now that could be because she might
Well,
see
I
that this is
what I
her
was just
son.
gonna say real quick is it lasts after she even realizes it's not her son. I think, right?
Yeah,
Like, so that's a sign that she's maybe changing a bit.
a genuine care. Maybe it's more of just a motherly thing of like trying to help this young man out.
Yeah, I think she even says like when this is the other hint of who Rio is. I'll say, right, is when he is hurt and everybody's scrambling. She looks at Rio and says, "Don't." Right, like don't take him. Um, there's a character that would be able to do that. So that's another hint there on who she is. But it just like the way that Catherine Hahn did this too. That way she says don't, and you can tell she actually cares was pretty good.
And I like the interaction where we talked about it a little bit earlier, where he finally comes to after he's healed, right? And he asks, "Did you put the sigil on me?" And like we talked about, she says no, or even if I did, I wouldn't remember, I wouldn't know. But then also he asks, "What happened to your son?" Or what really happened to your son? And that's where she's like, "Nope, this conversation is now officially over."
Yeah, yeah. Still too painful for her to talk about. And I think we will get the reveal soon again that she didn't purposely give him up for the Darkhold. I think it is maybe some sort of deal with, like we talked last week, about Mephisto that wasn't maybe originally part of, or maybe a misinterpretation of what she thought was the deal, and now she is kicking herself for that, and I think that's what we'll kind of get. She's not as heartless as everybody has tried to make her out to be.
So, are you still standing by? You don't think we'll see Mephisto during the series?
I don't think we will. If we do, what I'll say is maybe it's like a flashback, but they don't really show him fully. Like maybe like the back of his head as she's making this deal, or as he's carrying away the baby of Nicholas Scratch or something. Like I would think it's something along those lines, and not like a straight up full on shot of Mephisto.
So that thought exactly is kind of what I was thinking now. Of I think we will see him, or we will see what alludes to be him, because I think with all the spoiler news that is out there, I think if somebody had been cast as Mephisto,
We would have got a Funko Pop of Mephisto leaked or something.
not even the Funko Pop, right? But I think if someone had been cast, like hypothetically, right? I'm just throwing a name out there.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
definitely. But let's say who's the guy who played Kent?
Oh, Gosling. Is that what
Okay,
you're talking about?
maybe that's too big of a person, right? But
He wants to be Ghost Rider, actually.
but sorry. Okay, maybe not Ryan Gosling. Maybe that's too big of a character, right? But if they had cast somebody to play Mephisto in some way, shape, or form, the trades or something would have leaked, even if it wasn't that they leaked that like this person is going to be playing Mephisto,
Would say
we would
they'd
have
be
gotten
cast in an unspecified
in an
role or
unknown
something. Yeah, yeah,
role,
yeah.
right? Like there were, and maybe there have been some of these things that have popped up for, but I don't follow those as well as as I'm not into those as much as some people are.
Not that I recall. I definitely remember the Aubrey Plaza news.
She it's kind of hard to cast her and not that wouldn't have made news, right? She is kind of a bigger name, and especially with everything, I think it was timed very well too, where she was coming off of or going into White Lotus, and she was receiving a lot of acclaim about that. So that could have been one of those like, hey, let's strike while this is hot. So maybe that'll drum up more interest. But yeah, like I said, maybe saying Ryan Gosling's a bad name because he's a little too big for that. I could see him being Ghost Rider possibly, but so I think we could see a guy cloaked in shadows, or like you said, like the back of him. They can do enough to not show his face,
Yeah.
kind of like what they did with Wanda in the first episode.
Or like even Thanos at the end of Avengers, like just cut it before he turns to the camera type of thing. Like that's the only time you see Thanos' face in that end credit scene of the first Avengers. It could be something like that where you're just seeing like, you know, that, because Mephisto would probably take some sort of uh you know some sort of makeup work or CG, unless if they're going like the Lucifer route type thing from the Netflix series or whatever,
Look,
where he just
I
looks like a guy.
I don't know what they've looked like in the comics at all. I know they made a joke in the actual Lucifer series where the guy who plays Lucifer, Tom Ellis, very tall, handsome British guy, uh, black hair and everything. And so there's a scene. It's funny as hell because him and the detective he's with are investigating these things, and they think there might be like this devil worshiping group that's committing these
This is what he
murders or
looks like.
whatever. Okay, so they're like you know they you know they're and they get the password to like the secret thing where this cult's inside or whatever, and they're doing some sort of ceremony. So they knock on the door and they have the password or whatever, but like they get kind of turned away because like they get the password a little screwed up. And in the series, like I said before, the guy who plays Lucifer Morningstar always tells people who he is. He's never lied about it. He's always told people he's the devil. He's always told people his name's Lucifer Morningstar. Nobody believes him, right? So the detective's like, oh, well, you know, would you like to actually meet the devil or whatever? So he's trying to like show his ID. So he has the detective turn around and leave for a second because he's trying to get her away. Because he doesn't want to show his actual devil face to this dude who's at the door. And he does. And then that freaks him out and guy runs away. Because he's like, oh crap, I just saw the actual devil. Say all that to say, I know it's a different world. But you saw, if they went with a human form, you saw him in the Arrow verse there. Um, okay, I know what I was going to. In that scene, he talks about, the guy at the door talks about, aren't you supposed to be blonde? Because I guess in the actual comics, Lucifer was like blonde headed. And in the Netflix show, there are a couple of shout outs to that where they're like, hey, wait a minute, you're not what you're supposed to look like. Aren't you supposed to be blonde? And they play off, and he's like, yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, they could do something along those lines with Mephisto, but if they're
So has
trying to do like
Mephisto ever appeared as like a human form, or is he always in that like devil demon type form? From what
I
you can
don't know
read.
actually. I don't know much of Mephisto. There looks to be some comic I just saw where it looks like he's just in a red suit. So I mean, I guess they could do something like that, but usually he looks like that.
Okay.
Um, so again, this could just be something where they just show like the back of his head, and they're if they don't want to do a lot of makeup or CG work, like that would be
Or what they could do, like you said, if he's in a red suit, they could. So remember when we watched that episode of Buffy, the Body,
yeah,
the
yeah,
paramedics came in, and we talked. I talked to you about how Joss Whedon had shot that specifically
yeah,
to kind of not put any focus on the paramedics, but to like when you go through a traumatic event, sometimes your mind's not always there. Things can seem kind of hazy and blurry, right? And so like they didn't really show like they weren't showing the paramedics the whole face. The camera cut was kind of weird. Like it was blurry around the edges and stuff like that. So I mean, depending on how and why Agatha might have gave up her son, right? Maybe it was a traumatic event or something, right? So maybe she's not all there. Maybe the Darkhold has a grip on her and she's kind of going in and out of consciousness, but you can see like a being in just this red suit walking up. We don't necessarily get to see a face and taking her son away, like taking this
yeah,
baby
like
away that
that.
turns into
That's what I
son,
was
something
thinking.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be, I think, a really cool way to do it without it like distracting. I think too, like if you introduce him even in a flashback where he actually has like a big role, I think it becomes like a thing that overtakes the show a bit in the sense of like I don't know. Think about how much news last week made when they just mentioned Agents of Mephisto. People were like, "Oh my god, they finally actually mentioned him," and it was like all over my Twitter timeline of like, "We're actually getting Mephisto," after like all those theories of WandaVision.
Well,
If you
I think
actually show him, I feel like it'll kind of override. Like I think the more here's the goal of the show. The goal of the show is for Agatha to go through the road to get her power back, and we have a teen who is doing the same thing for a different reason um, to walk the road. And I think that's the payoff of the show. And I think it would be a little distracting if all of a sudden we get like a full flashback where she actually has conversations with this guy or anything. So I think it has to be more like surface level hints
I
and
think it could maybe quell some of that down because through Agatha, what other show was there? Um, with Madison. She-Hulk, right?
She-Hulk, yeah.
There were kind of like he was brought up a little bit. I think maybe it could be maybe more of it could kind of quell things down. Like last week, we got like his first actual mention of his name, right? Like there have been maybe little hints or possibilities or thoughts or whatever that have been put out through various shows. But last week was like the first, like, okay, he exists. Like we're confirming he definitely exists. He's in this world,
It's like
right?
that Santa Claus commercial with the M&Ms. He does
Yes,
exist.
they do exist. So like, but maybe like just the possibility of showing him could quell that down. Like, okay, we definitely know he exists. We've seen part of him. And if they do it the right way, they can do it without necessarily showing what he looks like or the actor. So that can still give them a chance to like cast the perfect person or voice or whatever it's going to be. And I think also we have to acknowledge the fact that even though they're not doing it as much anymore, they still have the possibility of set up for like a sequel or continuing a story or continuing the characters in some way. So like it's not as big as it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where like there's 4 or 5 shows a year, there's 4 or 5 movies, and everything's tied together. Like they said, they're going to calm down with only a
Yeah.
certain amount of movies and shows, but still, maybe you want to set up like, okay, this is going to be the television shows, right? Let's continue this universe on, and maybe not next year, but maybe 2026 because it takes a while to cast and film and put the production together, right? But hey, uh, let's see what we can get. Let's see if enough people get talking about it. We can continue on with this. Like
There's rumors of a spinoff
with Rio,
with Teen after this.
I had heard the possibility of maybe Rio getting a spinoff. It now maybe like this was a while ago as well. Maybe one, maybe both. Do we know how much Catherine Hahn is contracted for?
No, Disney has. I wanted to point this out too because I pointed it out on my DC podcast because things have changed. The way Disney does this now and Marvel does this is in the first run up, especially after Avengers and into building up to Infinity War and Endgame, they contracted people for like a crap ton of movies and
Yeah,
stuff
like 8
and
projects or whatever. So like you got to
locked
show up
them
in
in,
8 various things
locked them
over the
in. But I
course of
know
like
for
10
like
years.
Multiverse of Madness, I think around that time, Elizabeth Olsen said that she had fulfilled her contract, but like, or had fulfilled it with Endgame and then re-signed for like WandaVision and then like maybe for
Multiverse.
Multiverse of Madness, and that we noticed as well. I think it was her or somebody else that mentioned that when they were tied down with Marvel, they had to drop a lot of projects because they were
Yeah,
really tied in. And from what I read is that Marvel has kind of stopped doing the big contracts with stars because they're trying to be more friendly and letting them get other projects and signing more like 1 to 3 project deals that really like, you know, and the thing is they have then a good relationship with the actor where they're able to get them back anyway and
yeah,
it's kind of like a give and take type of thing where it's like, all right, look, we won't lock you down for 10, but will you please come back for more after this and we'll make it work with your
yeah.
schedule. And
Like maybe I know I saw an interview with Catherine Hahn where she had talked about she loves playing the character, right?
yeah,
She loves this character. She talked about how she would love to be like in maybe go against the Avengers or something like that. Or she talked about she would love to do more stuff in this character. Now I don't think they asked her or she brought up what her contract status is. And I'm not saying like she's contracted out for like 8 more
right.
projects, but maybe she's got 1 or 2 more because she's only been in 2 so far, right? Just WandaVision
Hmm.
and this.
And the
Maybe
reason sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say maybe she's got 1 or 2 more left in her. So that could be another movie, maybe another TV series, something like that.
So the reason I brought it up was because I saw a lot of people freaking out. I don't know if you saw the news. Kyle Chandler is cast as Hal Jordan in the Lanterns TV show they're doing for Green Lantern over on James Gunn's new DCU. And the rumor came out or was reported by Hollywood Reporter or Variety that he is signed for a 1-year deal with just the show. There's no movies included. And a lot of people were like, "Oh my god, it means his character is going to die or all this." And I was like, I said on my podcast on the Elseworlds, I was like, it doesn't mean that, because like we've seen Marvel now shift away from these big deals as well. It could just be that, yeah, maybe he does die, or maybe he is just a one-off. But it could just mean also that they didn't want to lock him down where then he can't take another project, and then they can re-sign him for a big Justice League movie later on if they wanted to. Like, there's no point in tying those people down if that movie that they're going to be in second or third is, 7 to 10 years down the line. Like, you can just approach them and get them back on board, stuff like that. So, yeah, I do think even if she is only signed for these two so far, she would, yeah, if like you said, if she's willing to come back, they'll work it out and they'll get her back.
Yeah.
I would say it's more likely to be 2027 just because of the way TV moves at this point,
I was
unfortunately.
gonna say like the earliest, like I think, like
Yeah,
obviously it would be nothing for next year. But I'm saying like the earliest we might see anything would be like a 2026.
yeah,
Like
like fall. Yeah,
yeah, like absolute earliest if everything lines up right. There's no strikes, there's no weird,
yeah,
anything that happens. The world doesn't end, no civil war, stuff like that.
right.
But yeah, 2027, 2028. But I mean, I know you've talked about it. They're slowing down on their stuff where they only want to do, instead of like 4 or 5 movies a year, they want to cut it down to like 1 or 2, maybe 3.
And they only have they already have some that are wrapped filming that they haven't even
Yeah,
released yet. Ironheart, Wonder Man. Those are probably next year's shows along with Daredevil. So then that's all of 2025. And then you're looking at whatever they film next year would probably be 2026, which is Daredevil season 2 and anything else that they come out with. But the Vision series is probably 2026. So, and that's probably all they'll want to do is probably those 2 shows. And then it kind of sucks. It's good that we're slowing down because I was at a point where I was,
it's too much.
covering
It's just
so
way
many
too much.
shows at once and the movies and all this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, because for a couple of years there, it was like we would watch a show, we would record, the series would end, there would be like a 2-week break or something. And I know this was also tied in with like Star Wars stuff as
yeah. And
well.
then I would go into Star Wars. And then after
But
that,
it
I
would
would
be
have
like
to
a
jump
two
back
week
over to
break.
Marvel.
Yeah, like a 2-week break or something, and then like a Star Wars series would pick up for its 8 or 9 episodes. Then it'd be like a 2 or 3 week break, and then the next. So I mean, they had a good cadence going, but I imagine the production schedule for that stuff was just crazy because you were
Yeah.
trying to hit like, hey, we need to. This is gonna end like this one ends October 30th. So they're probably looking like, okay, our next one needs to start November 15th, 16th, somewhere in that range, right? Depending if it's going to be like a Wednesday, Thursday release or a Friday afternoon. But,
Sometimes
stuff
they
like that.
overlapped. Miss Marvel overlapped with Obi-Wan. And I thought that was silly. I was like, why are you having a Marvel and a Star Wars show at the same time? You spread those out so the subscribers are spread out a bit. I don't understand why they would do back that was 2022. That was like the peak of it when they were really trying to get as much out as
Yeah.
possible. You had Obi-Wan and Miss Marvel overlapping, and I was doing, both podcasts, and like it was exhausting. But whatever. Enough about me and my podcast. Okay. Anything else about this episode before we wrap up? I don't have an episode title that is leaked. None of that has come out. So I don't have anything else.
So, like I said, I think this was a good episode. I haven't personally thought any of the episodes were bad or blah or anything like that. It was a good episode. It wasn't as good as like, any of the earlier episodes, but it was still good in its own right. And I think so. This was what, episode 4?
4 out of 9.
Yeah. So like you said, halfway through next episode, we're literally the halfway point. So I think this is kind of setting this episode because this one. So this will tie into something else. I think these have been perfect length episodes too. It's not like what was it, Secret Wars or Secret Invasion, where we had some episodes that were like 26 minutes,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
18, 22 minutes.
This was 40 without credits, and I'll tell you, it felt great. Like there was a point where I thought we were nearing the end, and I paused it, and I came back, and it said I had 24 minutes left. I was like, "Oh, this is great."
Or like I think after they survived the trial or whatever,
Yeah,
and like I hit up on my remote to see the time left because I was like, wow, that went by pretty quick. But I saw there was like 15, 16, 18 minutes left or something. I was like, oh wow, so there's still more story here. Okay, like there's gonna be more to happen. So I gotta say, I think the length has been really great. It hasn't been too short where you're like, wow, that was pretty quick. And it hasn't gone on longer than it should have where you're like, okay, come on, can we get on with the story? Like, like what like, okay, I got other stuff to do. So I gotta applaud them for the editing and that right there, perfect length, great. You get in, you get story, you get excited, and then it cuts you out and you're like, oh, I want more. Cool. But I think it also is setting up for the back half. Like I said, we've had seeds of distrust sown, right? Where they heard what Rio has said in the recording booth, and what's her name grabbed her and said, "We will not forget what you said." Um, we've got Agatha who won't discuss with Teen what happened to her son. So now she's trying to push. Like she just immediately got up and was like, "We got to get going. We can't stay here." So she's trying to push forward. We obviously have at least two more trials to go with Lilia and what's the other woman's name?
Jen.
And
Yeah,
Jen.
Jen. Her trial. Yeah, that was not this week.
So, but I'm saying like
Or
they
last
they
week.
still have
Yeah. So we still have
at
those
least
two,
their two to go through, and especially we saw something
and we have
with
5 left.
the doctor, that she experienced last week. And then we have whatever else they want to do with Agatha and Teen. We still have the Salem Seven that are hot on their trail at some point, right? I haven't forgot about them. I'm pretty sure Marvel hasn't forgot about them. They're just kind of spacing that out, which I like. Like we don't need to see something every single week like we talked about. So I like the pacing of it, and I'm gonna be sad when this all ends in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. The 30th is the end, so that'll be 4 weeks from this upcoming Wednesday when the next episode drops. And I know I said we have 5 left, but again, the finale is double. So we only have 3 weeks until the finale. At that point, yeah, 3 weeks until the finale, and we will have 3 more weeks of speculation after this before we get to that double length finale. So looking forward to that. Yeah,
Okay,
go
let
ahead.
me ask you this: when it comes to the finale, and when it came to the premiere episodes, do you like it and prefer how they did it, where they split it up into actually two separate episodes? Or with something like that, would you rather if they would have just combined it into one episode?
Um,
Oh,
so I think whatever the intention of the writers is what I would prefer. So I believe in this case they wrote them as 9 distinct episodes, and then Disney decided, all right, we're doing 2 premiere, 2 finale. Is kind of what I assume,
okay.
because they wanted to wrap it up by Halloween, but they also probably wanted space from their last Star Wars show to their Marvel show. You know what I'm saying? So they probably
Yeah.
decided we want to hook them with 2 episodes, and then we're going to wrap it up by Halloween. Boom. That's probably how they decided that. And but if we were going to be like, if they had told them ahead of time, this is when you're premiering, this is when your finale is, we want to do 2 episodes for this, 2 episodes for that, and then the writers decided to do it as one big one, I think it would be good because then you would have a different pacing to it. But I kind of like that it was 2 because I only had time for one that day, and then I
Okay. Yeah.
watched the second one a couple days later on the premiere
Okay.
instead of
Also,
pausing midway through and being like, oh, I
yeah.
gotta do it, whatever.
Or okay. One other thing, I read an article, or it came out this week. This has the best continuation
Retention.
rate, yeah, and
Yeah.
retention rate of any of their series so far. I
Lowest
didn't.
budget, best retention.
I didn't
It
see
did.
any numbers, so I don't know if they released numbers or if it was
Uh,
just they said it was the best retention rate. But
they released numbers for the first premiere week, which was was it 9 point something
yeah,
million
like the 10 million
worldwide.
people.
And then I saw Nielsen ratings, I believe it was, where they said it is from the first week to the second week, the percentage of viewers went up like 300 some percent or something. Um, so that was a sign that people, I guess, had heard the good word of mouth and then jumped in to watch the first two again and then kept
Yeah,
going or whatever. So, yeah, high retention, low budget. This is a success for Marvel. And this is how they're probably going to try to do those shows going forward. Lower budget and hope that it's quality, that it keeps the retention. That's another thing that helps this show, is that it's actually good.
I will say I hope this follows WandaVision's lead and comes out on disc.
Yeah, I hope I think they'll continue doing that. The difference right now, right, is that they have the deal with Sony to produce this stuff now, but there are rumors that they're going to keep releasing these on physical disc. Um and I hope they do, because I have everything except Moon Knight right now on the physical disc. I bought
Has
all the Star Wars ones. I've bought all the
has
Marvel
Moon Knight
ones.
not been released at all,
It
or is it
has.
just like
I didn't have the
okay?
time to get that one yet.
I want
But I have like
She-Hulk on
Falcon
this
the
too.
Winter Soldier. I have Falcon the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Loki season one are what I have on disc, and then I have all the Star Wars shows on disc that have released.
I want my She-Hulk physical copy too.
I think you'll
I,
get it. If
I
they want to recoup the 250 million they spent on that show or whatever it is, they'll put it on disc. They know the hardcore collectors will buy it. Okay. Well, you can contact us at all of our social media, which is in the show notes and the link below on the YouTube, the description. You can also comment on the video here, or comment on Spotify now, or rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps other people find the show. I'm hoping to finish reading this book soon. This is a book I've been reading called "The Sex Lives of Superheroes" that I was given this review copy, and I'm hoping to get the author on for a interview. It's a very funny book so far. It drops in November, but hashtag this is not an ad either. I was not paid for this. I got a review copy, and I actually really enjoy this. It's very well researched and it's funny. Um, so once I wrap up that, I'm going to try to get the author on and have a nice conversation with that. That's something you can look forward to either near the end of the Agatha show, or maybe released after the Agatha show wraps up and we're building up to whatever's next here on to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Over on Star Wars podcast, we've been having a break because there's been no Star Wars stuff, but we will be having more stuff coming soon on there. That's the Pod Awakens. On Elseworlds, a DC fan podcast that I do, I'm recapping the Penguin on Max and HBO. That show has been fantastic as well. So I'm living in a very good time right now where I have the Penguin dropping on Sundays. I'm about to have Superman and Lois dropping on Mondays, and then Agatha on Wednesdays. So that has been fun.
Have you seen the reviews are not good for Joker?
Joker too. Yeah, I'm thankful I'm not seeing that movie, but guess what? I roped in some friends that are seeing that movie, and they'll be doing the coverage over on Elseworlds. And then on our new podcast, The Fantasy Folk, we wrapped up our Rings of Power coverage from Amazon Prime's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. That show had a fantastic second season. So Ron and I were talking about that over on there. And then Casey and I will be back for films for the very first time on October 25th. He alluded to the conversation here where we talk 3 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That'll be dropping on the 25th. And then we'll be back to talk Agatha episode 5 next week. Have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you then.